Your thoughts activate the monad inside you. Not all thoughts. Specific thoughts. Thoughts operating at a certain frequency. And most people never discover which thoughts activate it. They think random thoughts all day. Ego thoughts. Fear thoughts. Survival thoughts. And the monad stays dormant. Never activating. Never operating. But there's a category of thought that acts as a trigger. A key. An activation code. And when you think these thoughts correctly, the monad recognizes the signal. And it activates. Tonight, you're learning exactly which thoughts activate the monad. Not theory. Not belief. The precise thought patterns that trigger monad consciousness. How to think them correctly. How to sustain them. And how to use activated monad consciousness once it turns on. Most people spend their entire lives thinking the wrong thoughts. Keeping the monad dormant. But you're different. Tonight you learn the correct thoughts. And the monad inside you activates. If you're ready to learn which thoughts activate your monad, comment thought activation right now. Most people don't know their thoughts have power. They think thoughts are just mental noise. Random internal chatter with no real effect. And because they believe that, they never learn to control their thinking. They let ego generate whatever thoughts it wants. Fear, anxiety, judgment, comparison, survival mode thinking. And those thoughts don't activate the monad. They keep it asleep. Because the monad doesn't respond to ego frequency thoughts. It responds to source frequency thoughts. And most people never learn the difference. They go their entire lives thinking ego thoughts. Low frequency, survival-based, problem-focused. And the monad inside them stays dormant. Never activating. Never operating. Because the activation code was never entered. The trigger thoughts were never thought. But there are people who discovered this. Ancient mystics, Gnostics, desert fathers, yogis, they all knew. Specific thoughts activate higher consciousness. And they practice thinking those thoughts. Daily. Consistently. And their monad consciousness activated. That's not coincidence. That's cause and effect. Right thoughts trigger monad activation. Wrong thoughts keep it dormant. And tonight you're learning which thoughts are which. Before I show you the exact thoughts that activate the monad, you need to understand why most thoughts don't work. 3 categories of thought exist. Ego thoughts, neutral thoughts, and source thoughts. Only one category activates the monad. And most people spend 99% of their mental energy in the wrong 2 categories. Once you see why those don't work, you'll understand why the 3rd category is the only activation trigger. Here's the breakdown. First category, ego thoughts. These are thoughts generated by your survival identity. The version of you that's trying to protect itself. Maintain status. Avoid pain. Seek pleasure. These thoughts sound like this. What do people think of me? Am I safe? Do I have enough? Am I better or worse than them? What if something bad happens? How do I get what I want? And these thoughts don't activate the monad. Because they're operating at ego frequency. Oh, that's fear-based. The monad exists at source frequency. Light, love-based. And low-frequency thoughts can't reach high-frequency consciousness. It's like trying to tune into FM radio using AM. Wrong frequency. No signal. No activation. Most people think ego thoughts 90% of their waking hours. And they wonder why they feel disconnected from source. Why spiritual practices don't work. Why consciousness doesn't shift. It's because they're broadcasting on the wrong frequency. The monad is there. Inside them. But it's not receiving the activation signal. Because ego thoughts don't trigger it. Second category, neutral thoughts. These are thoughts about logistics. Planning. Information processing. What time is my meeting? What should I eat? How do I get from here to there? These thoughts aren't bad. They're necessary for navigating material reality. But they don't activate the monad either. Because neutral thoughts are frequency neutral. They're not low like ego thoughts. But they're not high like source thoughts. They exist in the middle. Functional. Practical. necessary, but not activating. The monad doesn't respond to logistics. It responds to consciousness recognition. And neutral thoughts don't carry that signal. So if you're spending your mental energy on ego thoughts and neutral thoughts, which most people are, the monad never activates.